Title: The Haunting Matinee. I had always been a fan of horror movies, so when I heard that the old movie theater downtown was showing a classic horror flick, I couldn't resist. It was a gloomy autumn evening when I decided to attend the late-night screening. The theater was a relic from a bygone era, a place I hadn't visited in years. Its faded marquee spelled out the title, The Haunting Shadows, in flickering neon letters. As I walked through the creaking doors, the scent of ancient popcorn and faded dreams enveloped me. The theater was nearly empty, which only added to the eerie atmosphere. The dim lights cast long dancing shadows on the cracked red carpet that lined the aisles. I settled into a worn plush seat in the middle of the theater, waiting for the show to begin. The movie started, and I was engrossed in the eerie tale unfolding on the screen. As the tension built, my heart raced, and the old theater seemed to come alive with the film. The flickering lights played tricks on my eyes, making me question whether the shadows on the walls were real or imagined. My grip on the armrest tightened, and I became oblivious to the world outside the silver screen. That's when I noticed him, a figure seated in the row behind me. He was cloaked in a long, tattered coat, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. His presence was unsettling, but I brushed it off as a fellow moviegoer who, like me, was lost in the story. But as the movie reached its climax, I felt a growing unease. The man behind me seemed to lean in closer, his breathing heavy and irregular. I couldn't hear the film anymore. All I could focus on was the mysterious stranger. The sense of dread in the theater was palpable, and my heart pounded loudly in my chest. I stole a glance behind me, and my blood ran cold. The man's hat had tilted slightly, revealing only a pale, contorted smile that stretched unnaturally across his face. His eyes were hidden in the darkness beneath the hat's brim, and I couldn't discern any emotion in that eerie grin. It was as if he was savoring my fear. I turned back to the screen, feeling a growing sense of panic. The movie had reached its climax, but my attention was elsewhere. I knew I had to leave, to get away from this sinister presence, but fear had frozen me in my seat. As the credits began to roll, I finally gathered the courage to stand and exit the theater. I couldn't help but glance back one more time. The man was gone. The theater was empty, save for a few scattered popcorn bags and crumpled tickets. I hurried out, my heart still pounding, and was met with the crisp night air outside. I never returned to that old theater. The haunting shadows had left a mark on me, but it wasn't the movie that haunted my nightmares. It was the sinister stranger in the back row. To this day, I can't help but wonder who or what he was, and what sinister purpose had brought him to that old, decrepit movie theater on that fateful night. Title: The Haunting Screening. I'll never forget that fateful evening when my friends and I decided to visit the long-abandoned Grand Rex Cinema. Nestled in the heart of the city, it had been shuttered for years, and rumors of its sinister past had always intrigued us. It was a night none of us would ever forget. The moment we arrived, a shiver ran down my spine. The cinema's facade loomed eerily in the dim moonlight. The marquee still held its faded promise of showing a film long past its time. Midnight at the Grand Rex. As we entered the decaying lobby, the musty scent of old velvet seats and aged popcorn filled the air. Dust-covered chandeliers hung low, casting eerie, elongated shadows. We had been warned that the place was haunted, but our curiosity had the better of us. With our flashlights flickering like fireflies, we ventured into the cinema's cavernous interior. Cobwebs clung to the tattered curtains, and the ornate decor, once opulent, now whispered tales of grandeur long gone. We decided to settle into the front row, right beneath the colossal screen. The air grew colder as we pulled out our snacks and waited for the spectral show to begin. And then, it did. The screen flickered to life, revealing an old-fashioned cinema reel countdown. We watched the numbers drop, the mechanical whir of the projector sending an uncanny chill down my spine. The image shifted from black and white to color, and the movie commenced. It was unlike anything we had ever seen. The plot was enigmatic, and the cinematography was breathtaking. It was as if the film was from another era, a hidden masterpiece that had been locked away for decades. My friends and I were mesmerized, leaning forward in our seats, our unease forgotten in the allure of the story. As the plot unfolded, we realized that it was no ordinary film. It was a series of disjointed scenes, each more macabre than the last. An unsettling sense of foreboding crept over us. We were lost in a nightmarish world where reality blurred with fiction. The characters on screen seemed aware of our presence. They glanced at us through the screen, their eyes filled with desperation and fear. We were trapped, and the cinema had become a malevolent force, an inescapable prison. As the movie's climax approached, the darkness in the cinema deepened, and an otherworldly silence descended upon us. The characters on the screen began to chant in a language I couldn't understand. The theater seemed to pulsate with a sinister energy, and I could feel my friends' fear intensify. Suddenly, one by one, they began to vanish, sucked into the screen like phantoms. I screamed, reaching out to them, but my hand passed through empty air. It was as if the film had consumed them, and I was left alone in that forsaken place. The haunting whispers of the characters on screen grew louder, their desperate pleas echoing through the cinema. I was their only hope of escape, and I had to find a way to break free from this living nightmare. As the darkness closed in, I knew I had no choice but to confront the malevolent force that held me captive in this eerie, haunted cinema. My heart raced as I tried to unlock the secrets of the Grand Rex and find a way back to the world of the living. Title: The Midnight Premiere. The night was unusually cold as I stood outside the dilapidated movie theater, its marquee flickering intermittently with the promise of a midnight premiere. The rundown cinema had been closed for years, and rumors swirled about the horrors that lay within. As a fan of the macabre, I couldn't resist the temptation to explore its decaying interior, especially on the eve of Halloween. The theater's crumbling facade welcomed me with eerie creaks and groans as I pushed open the heavy wooden doors. A gust of frigid air swept through the dimly lit lobby, raising goosebumps on my arms. Dust-covered posters of long-forgotten films lined the walls. Their once vibrant colors faded into obscurity. The unsettling silence hung heavily in the air as I ventured deeper into the cavernous building. The soft sound of my footsteps echoed through the empty corridors, magnifying the eerie ambiance. I had to admit, the thrill of the unknown had me hooked. I reached the entrance to the main theater. As I stepped inside, the oppressive darkness engulfed me. The crimson velvet seats, now in a state of decay, stretched out before me like an abandoned throne room. Cobwebs draped over the rows, and a musty odor clung to the air. The flickering light from the projector booth cast eerie dancing shadows on the tattered screen, adding to the uncanny atmosphere. With a shiver running down my spine, I knew I was not alone. I felt a presence, an uninvited spectator, and I could almost hear their breath, shallow and ragged. I turned around, searching the void for any sign of movement. The unsettling feeling that I was being watched intensified, and I strained to see through the inky darkness. Suddenly a whisper, soft and indistinct, reached my ears. I couldn't make out the words, but the voice sounded tormented, like a cry for help from beyond the grave. Panicked, I made my way toward the exit, but the whispering grew louder, closer, and more insistent. It surrounded me, enveloping me in an otherworldly symphony of despair. My heart raced as I tried to escape the clutches of whatever unseen force had invaded my sanctuary. I fumbled for the exit doors, but they wouldn't budge. Panic overcame a reason, and I began to pound on the heavy wood, desperated to escape the relentless whispering that threatened to drive me to madness. Just as I was about to give in to despair, the doors yielded, swinging open with a sudden burst of icy wind. I stumbled out into the lobby, the whispers fading behind me. Gasping for breath, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped something sinister, something that lurked within the forsaken theater. As I stood outside, the marquee above me continued to flicker, now displaying a message that sent a shiver down my spine. Enjoy the midnight premiere. Forever. The theater had granted me an experience I would never forget, and it seemed I was destined to be a permanent member of its haunted audience, trapped in a never-ending midnight premiere of horrors that transcended the screen and seeped into reality. Title: The Cinematic Stalker. Working at the Grandview Cinema was a dream job for a movie buff like me. The smell of popcorn, the dimly lit auditoriums, and the flickering screens were my daily companions. But a shadow lurked among the silver screens, casting a sinister pall over my love for cinema. It all started when Jerry, a co-worker with an unnerving penchant for oddities, joined the staff. He was a tall, gaunt man with piercing eyes, always sporting a twisted smile that set my nerves on edge. Jerry was a self-proclaimed horror enthusiast and had a collection of obscure films that made even the most dedicated horror aficionados cringe. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but something about Jerry unnerved me. He had an uncanny ability to show up whenever I was taking my break or exiting the dark corridors of the cinema. He'd casually strike up conversations about obscure horror movies, often describing gruesome scenes in vivid, unsettling detail. The other employees laughed it off, chalking it up to Jerry's eccentricity, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was singling me out. One evening, after my shift ended, I headed to my car in the desolate parking lot. It was a moonless night, and the soft glow of the streetlights cast eerie shadows. As I fumbled for my keys, I felt an unsettling presence behind me. I turned to find Jerry, his smile wider and more chilling than ever. "Enjoy your shift, didn't you?" he said in a hushed, ominous tone. I mumbled a quick response, trying to escape his gaze, but he stepped closer, blocking my path. "You know, there's a movie I think you'd love. It's called The Stalker. It's about a man who can't escape his sinister co-worker." Fear knotted in my stomach, and I managed to stammer, "I need to go. Leave me alone." As I hurried into my car, I noticed him scribbling something on a crumpled piece of paper, which he then slipped under my windshield wiper. I didn't dare check it until I had driven far away from the cinema. The note read, "You can't escape me, but I can help you embrace your fears." I shuddered, my heart racing. It was clear that Jerry's unsettling obsession with me had crossed a line. I confided in my manager and the police, who assured me they would investigate. But Jerry's presence only seemed to intensify. One evening, as I locked up the cinema alone, I heard a chilling whisper from the shadows. "You can't hide, my dear." My heart pounded in my chest as I realized that the whisper came from the projector room above. I knew I had to confront the terror within the darkness, for the Grandview Cinema had become a stage for a sinister show, and Jerry was the director of my nightmares.